And this is the number one thing that is drying up men's sex life, destroying their relationships, and really creating a lot of disharmony in their internal emotional fulfillment of life. Welcome, I'm Jonathan White. I'm here to help you master your sexual energy so you can manifest your ideal life. If you want to learn more about sexual and self-mastery, make sure you subscribe to my channel and hit the bell icon to stay notified when I release new videos and go live. In this video, I'm going to talk about nice guy syndrome and how it's destroying the lives, the sex lives, the relationships, and just the quality of life of many, many men on the planet right now. So I'm getting the term nice guy from Dr. Robert Glover's book, No More Mr. Nice Guy, which I think should be recommended reading for every single man alive. If you haven't read this book, after you watch this video, go get a copy. It will change your life. So first of all, what is a nice guy? A nice guy is a person, a man who basically has this behavioral pattern of requiring the approval of others, requiring validation from others. And he goes out of his way and kind of manipulates his behavior to make sure that everyone around him likes him, basically. And we could say that, being a nice guy is being a people pleaser, but it goes even deeper than that. And being in this dynamic of the nice guy, having this behavioral pattern, tends to cause a lot of dysfunctions in your relationships with others, and it especially tends to dry up the polarity in your relationship, leading to a sexless relationship, leading to unfulfilling relationships, leading to breakups, divorces, always having dysfunctions in your relationships, basically due to some of these behavioral patterns. And I have to say, it was mind-blowing for me when I discovered what I'm going to share in this video, because I was the image of the nice guy for a good portion of my life. And this helped me realize why all of my relationships, up into my mid to late 20s, were very toxic, always ended terribly. I was never getting the kind of sex that I wanted. I was never really getting my needs met. To understand the dynamic of the nice guy, we have to understand the early life conditioning that creates this behavioral pattern in men. So like a lot of our perception of reality and a lot of our behavioral patterns, they're shaped around our childhood experiences, and especially, the types of trauma or difficult emotional experiences we had as a child. And we develop these certain behavioral patterns as self-defense mechanisms to avoid feeling that kind of pain that we felt at some point again. But most often these self-defense patterns become very, very dysfunctional when we hold them throughout our adult life. So when we're a child, sometimes our needs weren't met, right? We had certain needs, maybe a need for attention, we were hungry and we weren't fed in a timely manner, all kinds of things, right? And when we're a helpless baby, a helpless young child, we start to associate not having our needs met with death, basically, right? Like it's very severe. And so we start to shape our behavioral patterns in ways that we think will get us what we want, that will get our needs met. And the main pattern here is that of approval. When you're 5 years old and your parents are yelling at you because you did something wrong, it can be very scary. And you think, oh my God, my parents don't love me when I do this. If I keep doing this, they're going to get rid of me or something. They're going to stop feeding me. They're going to stop taking care of me. So, obviously this is a delusion, but when you're that young, these things feel very severe. And so we start to create these behavioral patterns. Okay, the most important thing is to keep mommy happy, keep daddy happy. That's the most important thing for my survival, is to put on whatever behavior I need to please them. And then this pattern becomes lodged in our emotional behavior. And we get stuck in this programming of, I have to appeal to those around me. And this becomes just part of who we are. We start to behave in this way in our daily life without even thinking about it, right? So now I'm going to talk about some common behavioral patterns that nice guys have. Hiding your perceived flaws is a really big one. We try to hide, any things about us that may seem less than perfect. We try to hide our imperfections, like say, oh no, I'm perfect. And so we put on this front that, we're just perfect. I'm always in a good mood. I always have this smile on my face. Everything's perfect. When beneath the surface, we're all fucked up. We all have our issues. We all have our things that we're dealing with. No one is exempt from this. Every single person in a human body has their flaws. But almost everyone is afraid to show these flaws. Almost everyone is afraid to show them true selves. So we put on this front of trying to hide our true selves, really. And again, seeking the approval of others. This is the classic nice guy thing. We don't want to express anything that might upset someone. Nice guys are always seeking approval from others, and they manipulate their behavior around this. Avoiding conflict is a huge thing. Nice guys will go out of their way to avoid any sort of conflict, especially in their relationships, especially with those closest to them. And, let's face it, sometimes there needs to be some conflict. If your boundaries are not being respected, if there's some serious dynamic of your own needs are not being met, it's important that you assert yourself some way to defend yourself, right? And so in being a nice guy, you often lack having strong boundaries and will go out of your way, again, being nice and appealing to everyone so you absolutely avoid any conflict in life. And this leads you to be very bland, very bland in your behavior because you're trying to appeal to everyone. And so you end up, not really being that interesting of a person. This is being an agreeable person versus being a polarized person. A polarized person's like, yeah, I have my opinions, I have my perspectives, this is who I am. I like these things, I don't like these things, And this is especially important in dating as well. This is one of the things men run into dating is that they meet a woman who has very different beliefs, very different, they're actually quite incompatible with this woman, but they're so desperate to be with anyone that they put on this front of oh, sure, yeah, I agree with this, even though deep down they're like, oh no, that's stupid. And this causes issues over time because you're not being your authentic self. So this basically causes you to never actually form deep relationships with anyone because your connection to others was based on a front. It was based on you acting in a way you thought other people wanted you to act. And nice guys tend to push people away from ever getting close to them because they think, oh, if this person gets close and I start really showing myself to them, they'll see who I really am. They won't like me anymore. And there's often this belief deep down of there's something wrong with me. I am unlovable, which comes from this, this childhood trauma of I'm inherently a bad person because my parents yelled at me this one time. It's often this deep core belief of I am bad or something's wrong with me. So I have to appear to be good to everyone else. But if they ever get close enough to me, they may find that I am bad. So I can never let them in. I have to keep myself closed off. And again, I was a nice guy for most of my life. I was really afraid. I was always in social situations just worried about people judging me. So I would, try to make myself appear agreeable. I definitely avoided conflict. And in my relationships, when my needs were not being met, I wouldn't do anything about it. I would just keep going like everything was perfect. So now that you see what are the behavioral patterns of the nice guy, how does this affect a man's relationships, sex life, and his life in general? The theme here is that the nice guy is not really being himself. He's not able to express his true self. And it creates this withholding. He has to hold things in, hold in his true feelings, hold in his true emotions, and it builds up and it builds up, right? And most nice guys get very, very depressed and they find addictive outlets, they take drugs, they secretly watch porn, they have affairs, they kind of have these secretive outbursts that they can kind of let their energy be expressed in a secretive, often very disharmonious way. And the other thing that happens is this resentment starts to build up because nice guys tend to prioritize everyone else's needs but themselves. They have to make sure they fulfill every single need of their their partners or those around them. If they're not happy, I can't be happy. So it's this overexertion of energy where their own self-worth is based on, are they meeting the needs of those around them? Everyone else's needs become a priority, but this often leads to them not having their own needs met. And it actually tends to build up this resentment. There's this deep down, there's this anger towards that other person because you actually want your needs to be met, but you haven't communicated that with them because you want them to like you and you want to appeal to them. So you bury these things inside and then eventually it builds up and builds up. And there's often this explosion in some way. Often these nice guys will have these very, very violent, maybe emotional, mental, abusive outbursts where they yell and scream at someone close to them. It can even be a violent outburst. It can be all kinds of things, right? The tendency here is almost this Jekyll and Hyde dynamic where when the nice guy's in public with his partner or whatever, he's often putting on this front yeah, everything's fine, I'm so happy, everything's perfect. But behind closed doors, he often is passively aggressively nagging around and manipulating those closest to him. So when you're a nice guy, your communication is often very vague and indirect, especially around your needs, your desires, the things you want. A lot of men have this tendency around sex and their sexual needs where they're very subtle about it, very maybe kind of passive aggressive, or they just joke about it a little bit without directly saying, this is what I want. This is what I desire. And this causes them to never really have their needs met because they're not clearly communicating or expressing it to their partner. But simultaneously, because their needs are not being met, they blame their partner and they direct this anger and resentment towards them. So all this resentment builds up over time. And it actually causes you to push people away from you in the long run. And this pattern of being a nice guy, just being agreeable, appealing to your partner, making sure you do everything, go out of your way to not upset them or everything, it kills the polarity in the relationship. What it becomes is a mother-son relationship where your partner becomes your mother and you become her son. And there's a lot of very boyish behavior in this indecisiveness, this indirectness, this just bland appealingness. It becomes a bit of a turnoff in the long run. And so sexual desire dries up, the relationship often dries up. It creates a lot of complications in the relationship. And this strongly relates to sexual dysfunction such as premature ejaculation and erectile dysfunction. This is something that men with this behavioral pattern almost always experience is some sort of sexual dysfunction. Performance anxiety is very strongly linked to this as well, because for a lot of men, performance anxiety is actually out of a desire to appeal to your partner, to appeal to the woman. You want her validation of her telling you, yes, you were the best lover I've ever had. Yes, the sex was amazing. Yes, you gave me all these orgasms. You were the best lover ever. A lot of men need that validation from their lover because they don't believe in themselves. They don't have the love or the ability to, create that pleasure within themselves. So they seek it from someone else. And there's a fear of displeasing that person through, not performing properly, ejaculating too quickly. And men get stuck in this self-defense mechanism of, having one embarrassing sexual experience, and they keep reliving it and they keep reliving it. And what's happening during sex for a lot of, nice guys is that they are so concerned about what their partner thinks about them. Like, am I doing this right? Is she enjoying this? I don't know. She doesn't seem to be enjoying this as much as I think she should. You're up in your head. It's just sending all of your energy outward, and it puts you in fight or flight state. It leads to a quick ejaculation. That's why I say one of the biggest keys to overcoming premature ejaculation is getting out of your head, getting into your body, relaxing and just enjoying yourself, just feeling your own body, feeling your own pleasure, and then allowing that to spread between you and your partner as well, versus like your whole focus being on, I have to make sure she enjoys this. One of the biggest themes of the nice guy is this theme of conditional love, I would say. There's a difference between being a genuinely kind person, because I think genuine kindness is an important virtue. Yes, I think people should be nice to each other. I'm not saying every guy should be an asshole, but being a nice guy is different from having authentic kindness. And here's the big difference here is because the nice guy, it's a very conditional love, we could say. It's a very conditional niceness. Usually what it is this expectation, okay, if I give you something, I must get something in return. So if I'm nice to you, you have to do something for me. When I started becoming aware of this, I noticed I had this tendency of when I wanted my partner to have sex with me, rather than just, being very direct about it or trying to seduce her in a very, obvious manner, I would really beat around the bush with it. I would maybe give her a foot rub or, something there was this okay, I'm going to give you something. Now you must give me sex. And this is an extremely common pattern that men have. It feels sleazy, and it's easy to get in this. This whole thing with all of these behavioral patterns is to become automatic. It's so easy just to be trapped in it without even thinking about it, without even realizing you're doing these things. And I want to share one example of the nice guy dynamic. I had a very close friend of mine, in my younger years. We were very, very good friends. But he had this tendency to, whenever he was dating a new girl, he would drop off the face of the earth for at least weeks at a time, often for months at a time. I wouldn't hear anything from him. We would never hang out, nothing. He was just, totally occupied with this woman. And then finally I would hear from him, and, it was always the same. Things became very, very toxic in the relationship. Often he was experiencing, emotional, even physical abuse. He had very poor taste in women, I would say. And so what he was doing is he was pushing all of his friendships, his other relationships, pushing all these things out to completely focus on this girlfriend he had, which was actually a very toxic relationship. He was 100% focused on fulfilling all this needs of his partner at the expense of his social life, at the expense of actually his own mental, physical health, because he was in a very unhealthy relationship. And so this is just an example of, this woman treated him like shit, and he just put up with it because, he was afraid to go for something else, because he was afraid to break up the relationship and, fulfill his own needs, right? And I see these nice guy patterns in so many men in the world. I was really stuck in a lot of these patterns for a long time. And for me, it still takes consistent intention and observation of my own patterns to see when I'm slipping back into some of these nice guy habits. And I'm going to finish this now by sharing some things you can do to shift this pattern. If you're a nice guy, how to get out of this pattern, and it will really change your life. Now that you've understand some of the, the people-pleasing behavior, the validation seeking, the conditional giving, start to observe your own behavior. Be honest with yourself. What of these behavioral patterns do I have? And start to observe, throughout your life when this is starting to happen. It's really easy to go back on autopilot with this stuff. So it really takes consistent daily work with this. Number one thing is to take responsibility for your own needs. No one else in the world is responsible for meeting your needs but you. This is the reality of the situation. If your needs are not being met, it's because you are not doing something to meet your needs. So instead of blaming those around you, take responsibility, take action, and do what must be done to fulfill your needs. Now, obviously, this can go in the other extreme as well. We have narcissism, which I would say maybe relates to fulfilling your needs at the expense of those around you. So obviously that's, the far end of the spectrum that's equally toxic as well. But fulfilling your needs can be, taking time off from work, going on a trip, doing something you enjoy, scheduling in time to go to the gym, to do a workout, to practice Qigong, to practice meditation, reading books, getting a massage, whatever. Do things that fulfill your needs. If sex has been drying up in your relationship, talk to your partner about it. Communicate what your sexual needs are. Sometimes that's all it takes. Often when you have a conflict with your partner, they may not even realize that it's an issue until you communicate about it. And a lot of men are afraid to communicate things because they think it will lead to, upsetting their partner. It will lead to more pain, but it's really important that you fully express yourself. Practice being completely honest with each other. Stop saying the things that you think other people will want to hear, and practice speaking from your heart, speaking your truth, sharing how you truly feel about things. This is being in integrity and authenticity. Notice when you're seeking the approval of others. Notice when you're doing something because you want another person to feel a certain way about you. And do your best to stop doing these behaviors. The only person's approval you should be concerned about is your own. Be direct and clear with your communication. When you're in a relationship, state your needs and your boundaries very clearly, and listen to your partners at the same time as well. When you start implementing these things into your life, I guarantee it will dramatically change your relationships. And it can even cause, strong conflict in your relationship as well, which is a sign that there was maybe some disharmony in there that needed to be addressed anyways, right? So basically it will either take your relationship into a deeper, more fulfilling place, or it will transition you out of a toxic relationship when you start to embody these authentic principles of what I consider to be true masculinity. Being honest, taking care of your own needs, living a life of purpose and truth, and expressing yourself. All right, guys, thanks for watching this video. There's a lot to talk about here. I mean, this goes so much deeper than this. I think this was a very good kind of introduction to this idea of the nice guy syndrome and how it's one of the #1 things plaguing a lot of men's lives, and they don't even realize it. Please subscribe to my channel, give this video a like, and let me know in the comments below what was your biggest takeaway from this video. Have a great day, my friends.